and motivational content on the platform. I'm super excited to announce a new experience on CreativeLive. It's called Fast Class. You've told us that you're busy and sometimes it's hard to dive into a full class from start to finish. So essentially, we're now giving you a shortened highlight version of our top CreativeLive classes. You can always dive into the full class with 5, 10, or 15 hours of great content. But now, if you're just looking to focus on a few of the highlights or want to be able to skip quickly to something that really interests you, you can now get a shortened fast class version of that class. We're also thinking this might be able to help you explore a new craft and save time while doing it. This is a great tool to curate your learning experience to help create the life that you seek. So you're probably thinking, great, how do I access this new experience on CreativeLive? That's easy. All you have to do is be a subscriber to the Creator Pass, and then all this is yours. If you're feeling isolated and looking for creative connection, try tuning into creativelive.com/TV. That's where we've got a 24/7 live stream from the kitchen counters.
I can do that backlit shot that I really like to do.
From the studios and living rooms of many of the world's top creators, where we're doing musical performances, Q&As, cooking shows, virtual book tour events, drawing, spoken word poetry, and more.
Life passed me by waiting for an invitation when the world is greater than my nation or my occupation. Be someone you've never been. You feel all that adrenaline? It's medicine.
It actually helps me feel like my days are more purposeful.
I hope that out of this deep pain will come some collective growth.
Dive into CreativeLive TV today.
Hi, and welcome to CreativeLive TV. This is your daily dose of some live television right from the homes, kitchens, and studios of your favorite creators. Every week on Mondays at 12 p.m., me, Kate Dessa, I am your host, and I am bringing you live to Andrew Scrivani's kitchen in New Jersey. Today he is joining us to teach us how to make a delicious pasta dish. By popular request last week, we talked to you guys a little bit about what you wanted to see up next, and we got lots of requests for pasta. So we're doing a little pasta dish this week. And without further ado, I will introduce Andrew. Nice to see you again, Andrew. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you for coming back to the Work From Home Cafe. So here we are once again, week 5.
Yeah.
So we've been at this a few weeks, and I think we get a little bit technically better every week. So
I think so. We're getting it's really feeling like a real show now, even though we're remote. We've figured it all out. It feels pretty cool.
It does feel pretty cool, and when I tell people about how we do it, they're all pretty impressed. So
yeah, I know.
So it's been a lot of fun. So let me tell you about what we're cooking today. So I have been making a dish that's something in the neighborhood of this. There's some little tweaks you can do to it, and I'm going to talk you through some of it. But this is like a family favorite of mine. It's a peas and onions with pecorino cheese. Now I'm going to add bacon today. So that's going to add another sort of layer of complexity to it. And then I'm not going to go much further than that, but I will tell you how you could go further if you wanted to. One of the things that because of the bacon, I'm taking out the garlic today because I want it to have a little sweeter, smokier flavor.
Okay.
But you could do the garlic with your onions in the beginning. And then on the back end, if you wanted it to be creamier, heavier, more decadent, you could definitely add some cream. So I'm gonna go right down the middle between those two things today, and I'm gonna show you how to do the sort of basic with a little bit of we're gonna upsell it just a little bit with the bacon. So of course bacon upsells everything, right? So
of course it does.
Yeah. So you said we were getting some requests for pasta. So how did that come about? Like, were there any specific pasta dishes people were requesting?
I'm trying to remember. Last week at the end of the show, we were talking a little bit, and I think there was some ravioli requests. And,
okay, right. Yeah. Oh, gnocchi.
Gnocchi, you're right. That was the other one. So
yeah, gnocchi is one of those dishes that you better practice quite a few times before you go live on television and start teaching people how to make it. We had a little bit of a gnocchi disaster here about a month ago. My niece, who's here with us, wanted to do gnocchi, and she was trying to do it gluten-free for my benefit. And the dough just did not come together. So we ended up with 2 or 3 pounds of potato dough that was sort of unusable. So I don't want to go down that road. I think I'm going to have to perfect my gnocchi skills before I get on CreativeLive and do that in front of a live audience. That's a little nerve-wracking. That's a little high wire act that I'm not quite ready for. So
homemade pasta in general it's a little scary to do live, but it is something that's like, it's totally doable. Actually, my husband for my birthday was literally right as quarantine was going into place, and he made me this amazing boar homemade pasta. And we don't have a pasta maker. We don't have a KitchenAid. We just rolled it all out, hand stuffed it. It was very time consuming, but it was incredible. And handmade pasta, like there's nothing better than handmade pasta, like fresh, real.
Oh, it's amazing.
And we all have a little bit more time at home right now. So if you can, I highly recommend venturing into making some handmade pasta because you can't get any better than it.
No, absolutely not. And you can see, like, I know a lot of you have been noticing my starter on the counter for the past few weeks. So it finally was mature, and I was starting to make some sourdough. I made 2 loaves this week. I was really happy with the texture. I was really happy with the color and my shape and my kind of beauty skills. I'm not quite up to food stylist quality just yet, but they made some pretty good French toast yesterday. So nice. So the sourdough experiments are underway. We're probably going to make some pretzels. I'm going to try to make my grandmother's scones with the sourdough in there. I don't know. I'm just going to try to put sourdough in everything. So because sourdough is something that I can actually digest. Nice. without as many problems, because I don't have a gluten allergy. I actually just have a reaction to wheat, and I just avoid most things that have wheat in them. But I've noticed that I can drink beer.
Well, thank God.
Yes, I could drink beer, and by being able to drink beer, I realized it may be the fermentation process. So I went and I started to experiment on myself again with sourdough. So far it's been okay. It's not so bad. So I'm hanging in there. I haven't been doubled over in pain yet. So good. We have that.
That's good. I have to tell you before we get started. Doing this for the last 4 weeks, me and my husband have been so inspired that we did actually get a KitchenAid mixer, and we're diving deep. We got a Vitamix and a KitchenAid mixer.
Oh, you spent some money.
We did spend some money, but we figured we're going to be cooking from home a lot more, and you're giving us such great recipes that inspired us to spend a little bit on some kitchen supplies to really up our cooking game. So I'm excited.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that. And I have been a really big supporter of anything Vitamix because I use a Vitamix like every day. Yeah. And I have a KitchenAid. I use it all. I use it all the time, and there are two tools that you spend a lot of money on, but they'll last you forever. So
that's what everyone says. So we finally bit the bullet and did it because I've been having so much fun in this show that I want to be upping my cooking game at home. So
that sounds great. That sounds terrific. So if you could look over here on our B cam, on the side cam, that I already put some hot water up on the pot because I didn't want to have to stand around waiting for water to boil. And I'm going to salt the water now because it's sort of in a nice low boil. And I'm going to be pretty generous with my water and then just cover it again and let that sit for when I'm ready to make the pasta. I'm going to flip you down now so you can see my tabletop and you can check out what I'm doing down here. So I have some pre-cooked bacon here. It's sort of, I didn't cook it all the way like the way I normally would for bacon and eggs. It's sort of like just cooked because I'm going to chop it up and I'm going to put it in my mix and I'm going to continue to cook it while we do the peas and onions. So the first thing I want to do is I want to cut this onion. Going to get the head and tail off. Get that out of the way. I'm going to skin this onion. Now, a really sharp knife here helps because you don't cut too much of the onion through, and you can just get the skin off. And it's a little layered, so you might have to take a little bit more off here. But my knives are very sharp. We're going to talk a little bit about knives and knife safety before we go over and shoot today, because I want to start to include some kitchen tips every time, sort of like what we did last week with the separation of the eggs. So here's our onion, and I cut it in half, and here's the grain. And I want slices of onion, right? So I'm going to go across the grain, and I'm going to go straight down, nice thin slices. This gets a little hairy here at the end, so I'm going to pinch it and just go slow, make sure it's biting, and then rock the knife down. Same thing here. Get it in, make sure it's biting, rock the knife down. You will not be able to do that unless your knife is really sharp. Uh-oh. He's talking to us.
We have people from everywhere watching this morning or afternoon. We have someone from Uganda, someone from Chicago, Becca from Chicago. Let's see, who else do we have here? We have India watching, all over the world. So
that's amazing.
It's really nice.
Totally amazing. So I'm gonna get these onions started. So I'm gonna get this pot going, and while that's heating up, I'm gonna chop up this bacon, and that'll be the last thing I do here on the tabletop. Now, this is 2 ounces of bacon. It's quite a lot. I don't know if I'll use all of it. So I try to sometimes when I'm cooking like this is to have a little bit more ingredients than I might need, because I could always use it for something else. So if I'm looking at the pan, I'm saying that might be too much bacon, which I don't know that there's really such a thing.
I don't think so.
Then I may back off a little bit. But I have 2 ounces here. I have 2 cups of peas here. I have some olive oil and butter. I got the pecorino cheese. And I got these really nice kind of trumpet-looking pastas. So I think it's time for me to get the camera on my chest. So I'm going to get that going for you.
And those are those fresh peas or are those frozen peas? Does it matter? Can we use either?
I think you could use either. Those are fresh in a bag, not like fresh from the farmer's market.
Okay.
I think I got them fresh just the other day, and I've used them a few times. So I'm gonna take it off here, and oh no, that's not what I meant to do. I'm supposed to take you on the little carousel ride, remember?
There we go. Yep.
Right. I got to put you back on there and unscrew it. Here we go. Carousel ride. I know. Live TV, everyone. Okay. Now I get you on here. Start seeing what's going on here. Yeah. Just got to tighten that up. All right. We're getting there. Almost. All right. Nothing like handling bacon and then handling your phone. Okay, how's that looking?
Looks good.
Okay, so I got about 2 tablespoons of olive oil here. See, that pan's good and hot already, sizzling up. And I'm going to also throw in about like 2 tablespoons of butter and let that
butter and
melt down. Oh yeah, butter and olive oil, because then you're not going to be adding any more milk fat or any kind of cream to this. So you do want it to be pretty. So that's onions are going to go in. We're going to let those start to caramelize. I'm going to add a little salt and a little pepper. Just give me a sec. I'm going to also uncover this because if you hear that weird hum, that's our pasta water getting angry at us.
And what kind of pasta are we cooking today?
You know, it's this little trumpet-shaped one that I had on my shelf that I got rid of the bag because I keep my pasta in jars. And I actually don't remember the name of it, but if somebody who's watching wants to look up the trumpet flavor, I mean, there we go. You see that? It's like, it looks like a bugle. Yeah. You remember those?
It does look like a bugle.
The snack food bugles?
Yeah.
It looks just like that. Okay. So we got that going. And I got tongs. I like to cook with
Campanelli.
Campanelli. That sounds very familiar. That sounds right. Of course, I should have known that. I should have done that research beforehand, but I was too busy trying to get a lav mic to work for this show today, which obviously did not work because I'm still in my AirPods. So I'm going to let that kind of start cooking down. In the meanwhile, I'm going to get our pasta going. So I got about 10 ounces of Campanelli, as we've just learned. You can see if I get you tilted up here. Get that going. I think I should turn that flame up a little higher. Now that the pasta's in there, the water is well salted. And
let me ask you this. I've heard both. Do you put your salt in when the water comes to a boil, or do you put it in before it starts boiling?
I put it in right away. I think that when you put it in like I did after it starts boiling, this time I did it that way because I wanted to show it. But it really does make the water sort of jump up. And sometimes you might boil your pot over when that happens. So I tend to put it in first and let the water come to boil with the salt in it, rather than throwing it in when the water's already seething, because you have a chance there of throwing it up. So, and you don't want that because then it's going to make a mess on your stove. And I do that regularly. Oh, I clean this stove every night, because I'm cooking all day long in this thing. So it's it's been a workhorse. You know, this home is our weekend home, vacation home, and it wasn't really intended. I mean, even though this is a piece of equipment that's intended for this type of use, it's a really good stove, but I really never intended to use it like this on a day-to-day basis, cooking constantly and doing a television show. So it is, a little bit outside of what I thought it was going to be, but it's capable. It's ready. All right. I think our pasta will probably take somewhere in the neighborhood of like 8 to 10 minutes. And I'm going to show you one thing I'm going to do before I drain it too. I might use a little bit of that pasta water in my mix when I add my cheese. So I'm going to start adding in my bacon now, because I think my onions are starting to caramelize nicely, and I'm going to sort of go by feel here. We'll see how much, because it is only 10 ounces of pasta. So I do want to be liberal about it, but I don't want to overpower the dish with bacon. So I think like that's a really good distribution. And I figure I used about 2/3 of what I intended. Okay. So I would think that's probably like a little more than an ounce, maybe closer to 1.5 ounces of meat. And like I said, you could use pancetta, you can use guanciale, you can use any of the sort of Italian meats, the sort of cold cut style cured meat in this, which would really work nicely. So I wouldn't shy away from any of them, but I had bacon in the fridge and I'm going with bacon.
What about salami?
You could do that. You just have to cut it really well.
Yeah.
And this is getting a really smoky flavor now, it's really nice. The bacon and the onions is really coming up to a really nice smoky flavor. It smells great in this kitchen right now. Look, there's somebody peeking. That's Daniela. We talked about her earlier. We were talking about your gnocchi adventure. Notice when you do your work from home cafe, there are people in your home. So.
Oh, I've had my dog bark because there's a delivery. My husband was playing PlayStation and slowing down my internet feed the other day. Just all sorts of new hurdles to tackle as we're producing from home.
So now I'm going to start putting in the peas. I have 2 cups of peas, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing I did before. I'm going to take a look and see how my distribution looks, and then make a determination as to whether or not I feel like it's enough. And I think about 1.5 cups is probably where I want to live on this, because this is starting to feel good. And now, go ahead.
Susan wants to know do you have a name for this dish, or are we just calling it what the ingredients are?
Yeah, I don't have a name for it. I mean, I guess we could name it.
All right, maybe we should.
Why don't we take suggestions from the audience as to what our name should be for this dish, and then from here on out, it will be that name. So you know what I'm really liking about this is that I feel like I just added a little more fat. I just added a little more oil and a little more butter, because it feels like it wants to be a little more wet and a little bit more fatty and oily and delicious. So that's what I'm going to do.
All right, we have another question for you. Another Susan. We have a couple Susans watching.
Susans. We got a lot of Susans.
Susan is asking, do you recommend adding a spoonful of olive oil to your pasta water to keep it from sticking?
That is a misnomer and a myth.
Oh.
I do not recommend that.
Okay.
And I think that is not something that helps the thing not stick. What helps it stick is the salt and the heat of the water.
Okay.
And stirring. So I'm going to test that. Okay, our pasta is just about ready. It's a little bit al dente, which I like. But before I take it down and strain it, I'm going to get a ladle. And I'm going to add a little bit of that pasta water in here and stop the onions from cooking, and add a little bit of moisture to this, because I want those peas to cook down and get a little softer. But I don't want the bacon or the onions to cook up too much. But you see, we have a really nice distribution there. Maybe a tiny bit more water. It'll mostly cook off. Okay, now this is going to be a tricky one, because I want to take you over to the sink. Whoa, that's heavy. Okay. I'm going to drain our pasta. Woo, and the steam and everything. We're really authentic here. My favorite word, authentic. Okay, and now the pasta goes in there. We're going to mix it up together. Now, there's probably also still some residual water in there. And we're going to stir that all through. So that's about 10 ounces of pasta. We did about 1.5 cups of peas. We did about 1.5 ounces of bacon, 1 whole onion, salt, pepper, butter, olive oil. And like I said, don't be afraid to throw some more in there if you want. Like I took that much butter out just because I thought, well, we might want to use that. So I'm thinking,
oh, it's beautiful.
What
that
the heck?
pasta itself is just so pretty.
It really is.
And really, it could take place of a pellet easily, but it's way prettier.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I've made this with shells. Shells is nice because, you know, any of the pastas where, like, it has these little nooks and crannies where the peas could hide and be, like, where you can get a really nice flavor. Okay, so I think we got that all mixed through. And I think we're done with that. I'm going to pick up this spoon I dropped on the floor. Sorry about that, people. I will not use the dirty spoon. I will get a clean spoon.
We have a name suggestion that's come in.
Okay.
Oinkers on the pasture. And then we have bacon pastalooza.
Oh, I see. I get it. Like a Lollapalooza.
Scrivani scramble.
Well, we don't have any egg in it, right?
No.
So
yeah.
we're gonna save that one. I have to preserve that one. So far, I've put in about 2 to 3 tablespoons of Pecorino Romano cheese, which you already know if you've been following the show is my absolute favorite grating cheese. And we're gonna mix that through. And I haven't. I'm doing this all in the pan because I think from a photography perspective, I want to shoot this in the pan. Because I think this will be really pretty in the pan. I'm going to try to pull some of those peas up from the bottom and get it going like that. And this pasta is probably pretty al dente. I don't overcook the pasta. An Italian pasta like this one that comes from Italy cooks relatively quickly and gets to that really nice al dente stage pretty quickly. So there it is. It's really pretty and looks delicious. I'm going to take a little taste and make sure we're good on flavor for salt and pepper and everything else. And just because, you know, you won't see me this time.
Italian cooking is so simple. Everyone, like, it's something that I think people think is a lot more intimidating. And last night, for instance, I made cacio e pepe, and I was on the FaceTime with my friends, and they were like, "What's that?" And I was really just spaghetti with Parmesan cheese and pepper. And they were like, "What do you mean? That sounds so fancy." And I'm like, really, it's Italian food is so simple. It's just the quality of ingredients.
And if you're making this for a crowd and you have a vegan in the house or a vegetarian in the house, you absolutely can change this dish to do it that way. Like, you don't have to use the butter. You don't have to use the pecorino. You could use a vegan cheese, or you could use no cheese at all. You can add garlic for more flavor if you like. You know, so this dish is very versatile in that the base flavors of the peas and the onions and the oil is what really constructs this dish. And then everything else is sort of an addition or a subtraction based on what you want to do. So I just tasted this, and it has just the right amount of cheese to where when I plate it, I would want to put more cheese on it. But I think that this is a good baseline for anybody you're serving this to, that you might want to keep it here and then let them add more cheese. Because for some people, if you put too much cheese, it gets a little bit salty. And I want to show you something, if I can get this close to the camera. You see how the pea stuck itself right in the bugle here?
Oh, yeah.
It fell out, but you see that? That's one of the reasons why you use pasta like this and why pastas are different shapes. Pastas are different shapes because of the sauce you're going to put on them. And something like this is really going to hold sauces really nicely. So that's really nice. And you've got all the color. You got the green, you got the red from the bacon. Okay, there's a couple of things I wanted to go over before we do photography today, because I know I'm spending a lot of time in the kitchen with you, and I want to go over some things that are really important when I'm teaching people in my kitchen as stylists. There are certain things that I implore them to do or not do. Okay. The first thing is, you see this, the pan hanging over the edge. This is something that most people do because they handle their pans like this, right? And then they forget it and they leave them out. But when you're in a tight kitchen, somebody walks by and can knock this off the stove, especially if it's got hot oil or something really dangerous in it. The other thing is that with children who are smaller will come and grab it and then knock it right on top of themselves. So this is one of the things where when I'm working with people in a kitchen, I always tell them to turn their handles in. And you have to be very mindful of that because it's important. The other thing that I wanted to tell you about is, where's my kitchen towel? Here it is. So a lot of times people just grab a kitchen towel out of the sink or out of the rack and they go to handle something really hot. Now, these pans don't have hot handles, but a lot of the handles that you have sometimes are hot, and they go to grab them with a wet towel or reach into the oven, even worse, reach into the oven with a wet towel. You will get a steam burn if you do that, because the wet towel will heat up faster than a dry towel because water conducts heat. So if you went like that, you might end up with a big burn on your hand. So that's another one that I wanted to tell you. That's sort of a little, I have like all these little pet peeves because I work with different people in kitchens all the time. And I try to make sure that they understand the things that are important to me. The other thing is about knives. I have a couple of knife ones. One is practical. If you wash a knife, never put it in the drain board, because then somebody reaches into a busy drain board and it cuts their hand on your really sharp knife. So that's one. Don't put knives in drain boards. The second one is keep your knives really sharp, because your knife should be able to do this. Whoa. Which is, I did not saw through that. I basically just pushed the blade right through. So you can tell I keep my knives really sharp. I sharpen this I actually didn't sharpen this. I just honed it on a steel right before I started today. Just 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. This is not a way of sharpening a knife. This is called honing. And what this does is it smooths out the little ridges that build up on the edge of your knife and makes them smooth again. Once this honing doesn't work anymore, then it's time to sharpen your knife. So those are a few little things I just wanted to tell you.
I always thought honing was sharpening.
No, honing will not sharpen a dull knife. What it will do is it will keep a sharp knife sharp, but okay. It will not sharpen a dull knife. It'll help a little bit, but when you, I would like to one day when we have some time, is actually go over the method in which I sharpen my knives, because I noticed that probably if you're doing a lot more cooking these days, you will find that your knives are getting very dull. I'm going to take this off
like my. Everybody online would love to see that, because people are really appreciating your tips today.
Oh, good. That's good. I'm glad to hear that. Okay. Well, and that's the wrong way to do that. There we go.
There we go.
You're not on the. I took you. So you could still see the thing on my chest. I just took the phone off so I can say hello. So yeah, I mean, a couple of those little safety items in a kitchen. Keeping those handles turned in. Don't put the knives in the drain board. Keep them sharp, and make sure that you're using a dry towel or an oven mitten when you're reaching into anything hot, because you don't want to end up with a steam burn. And I've seen it happen. And even with professionals and people, they're working really fast. They just grab stuff and they go and grab stuff out of ovens and they get hurt. So let's be safe as much as we are being tasty. So, okay. I'm going to put you down for a second because I got to get my harness ready to put you guys on the table so we can go shoot.
Sounds good. I'll remind everybody, this is CreativeLive TV. This is our free live stream that we're taking into the homes and kitchens and studios of our favorite creators. Every Monday, me and Andrew Scrivani are getting together remotely. I'm Kate Dessa, the host, and I'm here in Vegas. Andrew is at his home in the Jersey Shore, and he has some beautiful lighting in his house and an amazing kitchen. So each week he's bringing us inside his kitchen to teach us a new recipe and then teach us some tips to take beautiful photos of it.
So I'm going to bring a trivet over to the table this week so I can put the hot pan right on my table.
Okay.
And then set you up to look at that, and then I'm going to bring the other camera over. So I'll keep you with me for a second. I'll just carry you around.
Sounds good.
Okay. So there's our pan, and then let me flip the camera.
Oh, I love that old school strainer you have with the apples in it.
Oh yeah.
It reminds me of my grandmother's. It looks exactly like the one I used to use when I was a kid.
I'm very big into finding antiques. While I was collecting my props for all my photo studio and everything. So I have a lot of very interesting old props, and those are making their way into my home, because a lot of my clients don't like old props anymore.
Really?
Believe it or not. Yeah, it's really weird. It's weird that everybody wants something looking new and fresh, and not as much antique and like that. So, okay. So I have my camera and I am set up, I think, at a very high ISO, which I think is probably going to be too high. Let's see. No, actually, not really. It's kind of dark in here today. Okay. That's just about ready. I just want to get a few props and then we'll get going. So I have a nice wooden spoon.
Props? Yeah. What are you thinking? Like a spoon? What else?
Yeah, I'm getting
putting the ingredients around the pan to make those pop out, or top the pan with more ingredients.
I think what I'm going to just do is I'm going to put some cheese in a ramekin, because I think the cheese is the only thing left here that I would put on it. I mean, you could use parsley or something. I'm not big on garnishes when I'm eating at home. So I think doing it this way, plus I want to get a bowl that I could take some out so that I can show that the pan has been, like, something's been served out of the pan. I think that's one of the things I do quite often.
Oh, I like that.
So, yeah, so like I take a few out, like I just served it to somebody, and it gives me a little bit of room in the pan to move stuff around and show the ingredients, and it kind of gives it that lived-in feel a little bit.
The full story a little bit more.
Exactly. So I don't know if I did this before, right? I had chopsticks. I moved things around. Yeah. I moved things around in here or on the plate or wherever I'm doing it with chopsticks, so that I could kind of distribute the color better. Or you see my hands here. Okay, I'm directing, I'm producing, all in a day's work. Yeah, all in a day's work. I'm going to need a spoon because the peas aren't being cooperative. And
with chopsticks.
Yeah, the peas are not being cooperative, but they're at the bottom. You see all those peas?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to sprinkle those over the top. I actually might take some more pasta out of this too, so I can see a little more. But like when you're planning to shoot something like this, having the ability to just manipulate the food as much as you like, where it's not really going to change much. This pasta is not going to look any different 10 minutes from now than it does right now. So I can mess around with it and give it a little bit more life without worrying.
I helped my sister-in-law owns an ice cream business in San Francisco, and I would take photos, and ice cream is the hardest thing to take photos of because it does not look the same second by second as it's melting. And it's for me, one of the hardest things I've ever photographed.
Yeah, ice cream is really hard. but really rewarding because you ultimately, as you can see, I'm making my little artful mess with the cheese because that's exactly what happens when you're working with it. And I'm going to go for this overhead shot and see if we got something to work with. All right, we're a little bright, which is fine. And we'll go again. Okay, gotta get over the table a little bit. I don't have my camera stand, so this is the DIY version. Okay, I'm gonna show you guys now. All right, check it out. So it gives a really nice sort of lived-in flavor here of serving. You know, I think like we did with the risotto the other day, we kind of got in the pan a little bit. I'm gonna do that. You can see, I think this crop is a little, I'm gonna work on it a little bit, but you can see where I'm going for.
Yeah, that looks great. So the one thing I'm noticing from looking at that is that you're not actually getting any of the pasta that's on the plate. You just kind of have that little corner telling someone that, you know, you've served a dish and you're not actually trying to get them all in one shot.
That's right. I'm trying to kind of vary like what I've done because, you know, we've done this a few weeks now.
Yeah.
And we show it plated food pretty much all the time. But if you really want an accurate indication of how I shoot, a lot of times I will prep, and I have really nice looking cookware, and I would normally prep the food in cookware that I know will photograph well. Mm-hmm. Therefore, I can do this, and then from here, I could decide to plate the food and do it a different way. So I'm, from a photography standpoint, I am on my 50 millimeter macro, the 2.5 millimeter, 50 millimeter macro, which I like. It's that Canon. So now I'm picking up a little bit of background. I have a little bit of a flare happening on the spoon. And it has a really nice lived-in look with the soft depth of field. So I think it's really given us a pretty kind of rustic feel to it.
That is great. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, and I'm pushing this pretty hard right now. I'm at 1600 ISO, 125th of a second at 5.6 in this room today, where we've been pretty much overcast all day long. So I think it's fine for this. Once I get a little closer, I probably have to open up a little more. So I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do something like a little even messier routine and show the spoon on the table so I can see a little bit more of the food. I'm going to get a little bit more of the bacon in the shot, distribute the peas a little more so that there's more green throughout. It's not all bunched up in the corner, because that happens.
Yeah.
And you want to be mindful of that, because sometimes it looks weird when you look at a shot and it's all the peas have sort of migrated to one part of the plate. You don't want to be too precious, but definitely want to be mindful. And let's see, can I get high enough?
Ashley Lewis has a question about lighting. Do you always use natural lighting, or are there instances or types of food that you would opt for studio lights?
Yes, all of the above. I shoot I shoot with daylight quite often, but when I do use studio lights, I try to mimic daylight. Okay. So there are certain kinds of things that I like to do in a studio setting with lights. I use a lot of LED lighting.
Oh wow, that looks so good.
I don't use strobe very much anymore, but there are instances where strobe is more appropriate, like for beverage work. You want to really
strobe better for beverage than LED?
It depends, but the thing is that if you're doing a really fast shutter and you're trying to get a long, what do you say? I'm trying to think of what they taught us in art school. The arc of the light is different with the strobe because you want to be able to shoot like stop motion. You can't do that with an LED light. It's just not enough. There's just not enough light there to get the camera up to speed to shoot something in stop motion.
Okay.
So you get a better opportunity to do that with a faster light, something that's going to give you the opportunity to shoot at like 250th of a second or 500th of a second, and you're never going to get that with LED lighting.
Gotcha.
So that's really the difference. So, all right.
And are you always using like a continuous lighting source, or do you ever use flash?
Well, strobe would be the continuous lighting source. Would be a flash source. But I normally use a continuous source because I find it easier to work with. Yeah. So here I'm going to plate some of this pasta from the other plate and make sort of a bigger scene here. I'm going to make a scene, people.
Most of the photos we've taken have been pretty close up, so this will be nice to see more of a full scene.
A little bit more of a scene. I'm going to try to get in there. Yeah, I got a nice distribution of color. I don't have too much food on the plate. It's one of the things that a lot of people ask me about is how much food to put on the plate. Because a lot of times people put too much and it's just a little bit overdone. So I think the only thing that's missing in this is maybe a little grind of pepper, which I like to have sort of a colorful, sort of representative plate. And I might actually just like a little bit of pepper on this. I got some extra cheese on there. I don't have a utensil, which I'm going to grab. I'm going to get a fork.
While you grab that, we have another question from Tanya. She wants to know, is it possible to actually capture steam from your camera, or is that something that's always added in post-processing?
Most of the pictures you've ever seen of mine that have steam are real. So I capture steam all the time. You need to have a background that will support that. Ooh, I'm really bright. So you need a contrasty background to do that. So I got a lot of stuff happening here. So I think I need to reevaluate how I want this laid out. So I got this little mess here, which works for either that or this. So if I leave the little mess there, and then I gotta get this back in here, kind of condenses my scene a little bit. And gives me a little bit more room to I want to see handles too. When I look at pots and pans, I want to see handles because I want to know that it's a pot or a pan. I don't want to make a guess of what that is. And you only have to pick up a piece of it, but it really does add something to the shot. And I'll show you what I mean. So we're a little under. We lighten that up just a bit, and then we'll go again. Yeah, I need a little more room. I'm going to have to maybe crop that later. Maybe not. Okay, so when I get over here, you could see that there's the handle of the pot here and a little bit of a handle here in the shot. And it gives you a sense of place. It gives you a sense of what is actually in the shot. If I only kind of saw just this half here of the pan, you may not quite get that it's, quite interesting. It's got nice shapes. It's a pretty pan. It's really got a lot going on. And you want to be able to pull things in tight and then catch a lot of that in one shot. So that's kind of nice too.
Oh yeah, that looks so good. That tells a full story there. That looks great.
Yeah, that's the hope, right? And the hope is that we are just doing our storytelling like this, and that you only need, 2 by 2 feet by 3 feet to make that happen. And if you make the right choices with your lensing and you look at the lighting the way you need to look at your lighting, you're going to end up having a lot of success. And, you know, I can do a macro shot here. I could do a big wide overhead. If I had my camera stand, I would be shooting from way over the top of this table and creating that shot, which I know a lot of people do. I could put everything on the floor, but I don't know that that's very good television, shoot on the floor. But I know a lot of you do that, and I think that's absolutely valid. If you want to do that big overhead, is to put your table surface on the floor and shoot standing over it. Just make sure you're not blocking the light when you do that. That's really important.
Yeah, that's something I would say often when you're doing the overhead shot, you're creating a shadow very often. And
very
I know
often.
That's something that people ask questions frequently about, is how, when you're capturing those overhead shots, you know, you have to be very aware of your light source. And do you have any other recommendations on how to avoid, you know, getting your shadow in those overhead shots?
Well, sure. I mean, I think that what I talked about last week about getting too close to the table while you're wearing any particular color and casting on the table, whether you're bouncing light because you're wearing white or you're negging light because you're wearing black. I want to show you. I have one more thing that I brought from my studio this week. I didn't use it, but I want to show it. Is, if you look at me in the bigger camera, so this is a piece of foam core. And I'll step over here. So this is a piece of foam core, and it's white on this side, and it's black on this side. And I can cut this up into pieces, or I could use it as is, and I could use it with those brackets that we showed you last week, which are still hanging around. And you can kind of create a big bounce card like that and make it stand up. I might want to put two of these on and actually create more of a tripod act. But basically, I just put a lot of fill back onto that, or if I wanted to flip it, I just created a lot of shadow here. So that's kind of what I was thinking in terms of last week. I didn't have this with me. I was doing my DIY with that. But this is really more like what you would do in a studio setting, where you have a big piece of foam core. You can cut it down into smaller pieces of foam core. You got your brackets and A-clamps, and you are able to create a little bit more of a scene that you normally would have in a studio setting. So it's an inexpensive thing. You can order it online. You can pick it up at an art store when art stores are open again. But there, you get a nice piece. You cut it into workable pieces that you could use, and you bring them with you when you go to shoots. And then it's a very easy DIY kind of fix.
So if you are trying to capture steam, like Tiana was asking earlier, would you kind of use the black foam core to kind of serious contrast?
I definitely would. Like, so let's say the pot was steaming.
Yeah.
I would take this and put it behind it where I'm not blocking the light, right? So let's say I got this cross light coming in and I shoot this way with this as my background. The steam is rising off of this. It is absolutely going to become sort of contrasty against this. And then you meter for the overall scene, and you're going to be able to see the steam rising against the black background. That's definitely how it's done. So I have my entire studio is draped in theatrical curtains. So I can close the entire studio down to get rid of all of the light in the room. Or I could selectively use the curtains to block off or create contrast where I need it. So very often I will shoot against those black curtains where they're behind my subject, and I have steam or something rising off of it, and gives me a lot of high contrast where I can capture steam.
Cool. And I'm just thinking about, you know, because the steam evaporates so quickly. If you're trying to capture steam, you should probably keep the pot closed for as long as possible before you have that all set up and then you take it off, and because it reminds me of shooting ice cream. It's you have a very finite amount of time before the food actually starts to look different or the steam looks different. So getting that all set up ahead of time is really important, right?
Yes, and having your correct meter, make sure you have cards in the camera, make sure all of the things that could possibly be something to delay you already taken care of. And then the other thing you could always do is get a hot plate, because that's what I do to cheat.
Okay, good.
So I will put a hot plate on the tabletop, and then I'll put the soup pot or the fried chicken or whatever I'm working on, then frame it out or crop it out in the shot, and then I've captured oil just jumping off of fried chicken. I've captured steam and smoke and flames, all with that technique. So, but having a heat source to work with on your studio table is it's really quite amazing to do it that way.
And when you're shooting stuff like that, what speed, what iOS are you shooting at when you're really trying to get those kind of very quick happening things?
I think you need to be at least 125th of a second, and then you need to adjust your other your aperture and your ISO according to your light situation. Yeah. But right there, your shutter speed is your priority, because you're going to need a little bit more speed to capture things in motion. Smoke doesn't move and steam doesn't move that fast, but flames flicker very quickly. And if you want to capture a really clean flame shot, you want to be as fast as possible.
Totally. We have some people sharing photos of ice cream. People are loving all of these tips that you're giving. Nice info about the curtains around the studio. People are really appreciating this.
Cool. Yeah, I got them at a place that specializes in theatrical curtains, and then a buddy of mine came in, and one of my assistants, and the three of us installed them in the studio. So basically, we put that track that usually is like around the hospital room, the track in the ceiling. Yeah. So it's all the way against the walls and against the windows, so I can just draw them all the way around everything I'm doing. So like when I'm in there with studio lighting, and I don't want the light from outside coming in, I'll draw the curtains all around and then light the scene in the middle. So that's pretty cool.
That's genius. I'm excited for when you get back to your studio and we're coming to people from your studio kitchen.
Yeah, that'll be fun. I mean, we'll have a lot more stuff to kind of play with over there. We have lots of props and we have lots of gear, and we have the whole studio set up and my camera stand. So we have a lot of toys to play with. So I think eventually we'll do one from there. Once I get back to New York. New York had a bit of we've been having a bit of a rough time. I've been back a few times to check on things, but I think our governor today was saying that they're going to do modified openings in a few weeks. So at the end of the week, they're going to start modified openings of certain businesses. And I think that should start to pave the way for me to get back to New York to do a little bit more things back home.
Yeah, well, I'm excited for you to be able to get back to the city and get back into somewhat of a regular workflow. I'm sure you miss your studio greatly. You have so many cool tools in there to up your photography. So, I mean, that said, your photography has been beautiful with what you've been doing with your DIY, but I'm sure all of the photos from the studio are going to be that much more impactful.
Yeah, we're gonna trade the luxury kitchen for the nuts and bolts kitchen when we go back to New York. My stove is older than I am, I think, in my studio. I don't have this fancy stove or anything like that, but it gets the job done, and we have all of the tools at our disposal to make great food and to make really great photography. So I'll be happy to share that with everyone when we get back there.
All right, that sounds good. Well, I'm excited to try out this dish this week, and I'm gonna track down some of this pasta, because I just have penne, and this just is so much prettier than penne, and it feels like you gotta get something pretty to make those peas pop.
Yeah, I think so. There's quite a few really pretty shapes when you kind of really dig deep. And if you actually Google something like best pasta for peas, they may actually have a recommendation. And I do recommend shells, small shells.
Oh,
I
yeah.
actually made it. Last time I made it with the small shells, and the peas just love to go right into the little shell, and it's really delicious. One of the other things I like to do with a dish like this is a dollop of ricotta cheese on top.
Ooh, that sounds
Can't go wrong with that either. So, like I said, you can play with this dish a number of different ways. You can make it more decadent. You can make it less decadent. You can make it vegan. You can make it vegetarian. You can do it anything you want with this. You can use different types of meats, not just bacon. You can use guanciale. You can use pancetta. You can add cream at the end if you want. You would add about 2 to 3 tablespoons of cream and just kind of thicken that up and make it a little bit more decadent. Add as much cheese as you like, and just enjoy it. It's a fun dish. It's really easy. It's very instinctive cooking, and I'm hoping that you pick up on that.
Yeah, this one feels like a dish that you can't really go mess up. You know, you can add a little extra of one ingredient, and it's not gonna hurt anything. So
no, definitely not. This is very forgiving.
Yeah, totally. Well, now going forward, we are making little videos that Andrew is going to share the recipe with us, and then keep a lookout for the ingredients and the recipe. We should have it to you guys later this week, and we will be back next week at 12 o'clock for another episode of the Work From Home Cafe with Andrew. Andrew, any ideas on what we're going to be making next week?
I think I might go back to dessert next week.
Okay.
Or if not dessert, then maybe something other than savory. I think we might try to go sweet next week.
Okay.
So it may be a sweet dinner dish or maybe a dessert. I'm still playing with some ideas. But if you get some suggestions out there and you want to share them with me, I have plenty of time to plan. So
Okay.
and I have another trip to the market this week. So
All right.
if there is something that. Yeah, if there is something that everybody wants to see, I've been trying to do a lot of stovetop stuff so that there's action. You could see what I'm doing. But I'm not afraid to use the oven. I'll use it. Don't make me come back there. I'll use the oven.
All right. Well, everybody heard that. So if anybody has recommendations and they want to see Andrew make something special, please leave comments here and we will take your recommendations. I'll make sure Andrew gets them, and we'll be back next week at 12 o'clock PST from Andrew's Kitchen, maybe in New York, but most likely in New Jersey, right?
Oh, yeah. Next week, we'll probably still be in New Jersey. We're not going back to New York just yet. But we can plan on one. And even if I'm still staying in New Jersey, I think I've been going back to my studio to work. So we can work on getting one done from there. I think it'll be okay. So, right. But remember, if you want me to do a recipe, stovetop is better because it's more visual, and keep it something that I can make in about 40 minutes so that we have some time to shoot. So that would be the only parameters I would say is try to keep it in that time frame, because that way we'll have time to shoot it at the end. So that would be, so stay in there.
Grady's requesting something with cinnamon if you're going to go for something.
Okay. We can think about that.
Okay. All right, Andrew, thanks again. And this is so much fun. I will see you next week on CreativeLive TV for another episode of the Work From Home Cafe.
Thanks, Kate. It's been fun. I'm glad everyone came, and I'll see you again next week.
Okay, sounds good. Have a good one.
See ya.